Now we're going to move into Strange Interlude. And this is when we kind of use this case to start the story with Carlotta Monterey, who would become his third wife. So they met for the first time in 1921. She was an actress, and she starred in The Hairy Ape. They did not get along on their first encounter. She didn't like him at all. They met later in 1926. He is married to Agnes. She is just divorced from her third husband, and they slowly start a love affair. And so 1927, this is going on. By 1928, I'll just say, elope to Europe. Basically, they're trying to get away from the paparazzi. He is an extreme, he's the most popular playwright in America right now. And the press is hungry for tabloid type gossip, and he is taken up with an actress, and so he's demanding from Agnes that they get divorced, but in the meantime they go off to Europe and wait for her to come around. Basically, we have a scrapbook here detailing Carlotta Monterey's career as an actress from about, I think, 1915 to 1933. So this is an amazing artifact here. We have it open to a page with a picture of O'Neill there, a story about him. But this was, of course, before she knew him. When Agnes does grant a divorce in 1929, they settle in France, and he is really looking for a place to be alone, to write, and Carlotta is really dedicated to giving him that space. So they settle there, but at the same time, as I mentioned before, Dynamo comes out. It's a big flop, and he's working on Morning Becomes Electra, his most ambitious play yet, probably his longest one yet, and he wants to be in the U.S. for that production so he can be a part of it and make sure it's a success. So they return in 1931. To the U.S. to do that, and that becomes a big hit. So in the meantime, there are a number of adaptations going on. Wilderness is a notable one, both in O'Neill's career as being his only outright comedy, but also in Harley's collection for being very well represented. It first was staged in 1933, and it's a nostalgia play. It's really based on on his kind of young adulthood, but with a happier, more loving family than he had. It was a big hit on the stage, and they took it across the country. This was, as the Great Depression is really eating away at America, I think nostalgia is probably a big draw at the time. And 2 or 3 years later, they made it into a hit movie. And we have a window card down here, and we have a press book up there, and so that's what they would send to the theaters with marketing materials that they could put in the theaters. And then we have a scrapbook, a photograph book here, a photo book of the production of the movie. Harley, do you want to say anything about that?
Yeah, and I don't remember where I got that, but it's and I really didn't spend a lot of time researching it, but it's wonderful. There was a woman who was a bit part in the movie, and when they were on on set or not on set, when they were whatever hanging out with each other, she took a lot of pictures, and she took snapshots of people in the movie, and has captions, and they're I don't know how many of them, 20, 30, 40, I don't know how many, there are a lot of them in there, and some of them are a little faded, some of them not, and it's just wonderful because she documents the making of this movie, and again, I didn't spend much time or any time researching it, but it's something that somebody would have a lot of fun researching.
The collection is really rich in photographs and personal photographs, and we have a number of them up here. A number of them are of O'Neill and Carlotta in their early years together. They're often inscribed to people, and kind of showing their life together in France, in the Canary Islands, and then in Georgia. and in the U.S. Um, and I think all of those came from the playwright Leon Merlas. Is that right?
Yeah. So, right. So Leon Mirlas he was an essayist and a playwright who lived in Argentina, and he actually translated uh, many of O'Neill's plays into Spanish in the 30s and 40s. In 1987, I think, he was living in Buenos Aires, and he needed money. So he contacted an O'Neill scholar, a guy named Jackson Breyer, and Jackson contacted me and wanted to know he had a lot of letters from O'Neill to himself, and from Carlotta to himself, and a lot of inscribed photographs and some really interesting things. And I was interested. So there was no, this is 87. There wasn't any email. And the question was, so how do got a phone number for him, and that's all I had, and an address, but I didn't want to write letters back and forth to Buenos Aires. That would take forever. So I tried calling him on the phone, and somebody answered the phone in Spanish, and I can say "Hola, buenos dias," la cuenta por favor. That's about it. So we went back and forth, and finally I got somebody who could speak English. And what we arranged was that his son-in-law, a guy by the name of Leonard Geraldnik, was coming to the United States. He was coming to New York to some meeting. And we agreed that he would first stop in St. Louis. He would spend the night at our house. He would give me the letters and the photographs and everything, and I would give him a check, and then he would go on to New York. So this was it was January 20th, some cold day in January. I remember it was freezing cold, and I go to the airport to pick him up, and I'm waiting there at the pickup spot, and I see this guy standing there, this guy in a disheveled overcoat, and he's not shaven, and he's got the satchel under his arm, and he looks like he's going to be picked up by DEA agents at any time. And I'm thinking, please don't let this be this guy, because I'm taking him home to my family, and I'm going to get killed. So it was him. So I took him home, but we had planned to go out to dinner that night. He had just spent 24 hours on an airplane. So he took a shower, he got dressed, he looked immaculate, he looked like a member of the Argentinian aristocracy. He was well spoken. We went out to dinner, and it was nice, and I ended up getting a lot of good stuff from it. But I was scared.
You never know who you'll meet on these
No.
collecting endeavors. So, as I mentioned, they came back to the U.S. in the early 30s, and by 1936, I believe, they move out to the West Coast, and at this time, it's announced that O'Neill has won the Nobel Prize, and he is still to this day the only American playwright to have won that prize. But again, he was wanting to get away from basically all of the hubbub of Broadway and New York City and the press and everything. He wanted to write. Really, that's what he wanted to do. He had quit drinking. When he wasn't drinking, he was writing, and he never mixed the two. And so if he was writing, he wouldn't be drinking. So they eventually settled in, they built with the Nobel Prize money a house in Western California, which they dubbed the Dow House. And they lived there from about 1937 to 43, 44, after World War II had really made them have to move. But we have some letters here from their years at the Dow House, both from Carlotta and from O'Neill, really kind of giving a daily slice of life, what he's working on, what they're doing. So those are really important documents from that time. And then I must not forget the undershirt, boxer shorts that we have here, this little ensemble, as well as his wallet, all of which are engraved with his initials. And Harley, did you have a story about those?
So the undershirt and the wallet, I think I got from a guy named Jerry Hagman, who lived out in California, and had I forgot how he got them, but the undershirts became a big deal in the news. They were advertised by a guy named, the name of the place was Johnny Cake's Books, and it was like all over the country. There were, we've got one up here. This was in the Paris review. If you want to sort of come around at some point and look at it, it says, underpants. And everybody was excited that O'Neill's underpants were being sold. He was selling it for $1,750, these pair of underpants. So I called and talked to him. Nobody was going to pay him $1,750. And I told him who I was and what I was about. And I always said, and I always use we. I didn't say I. We kind of work better, more, And I got him to come way down, and he got the underpants. And when Marlene saw the underpants and the undershirt, and she said, "Where was all that stuff? You had all that stuff?" And I said, "Yeah, it was in my study." She just never saw it.
Hidden away. And our exhibits manager, Jessie Cerruti, who really put this together, she loved this underpants, and she made a sticker, which you can grab one if you like, as another souvenir, with these quotes: underpants, Long John's journey into night, and maybe the most risque one, Holy Iceman cometh. So those are all here on the sticker here.